Welcome to Shelf Help, a channel dedicated to talking to the void about whatever book I happen to be reading. I am your host, the reader. The following review will contain spoilers. Alright, I did a poll, and y'all said you were interested, so here we go. Why am I reading this book? It's not fantasy or sci-fi, which make up the bulk of my reading. First, I am one of those people who never outgrew the dinosaur phase. I still look upon them with awe and wonder. There was a long time I wanted to be a paleontologist. But I lack the patience for the meticulous cleaning of fossils in lab work, and as field work, I may not find a dinosaur, but I absolutely would find skin cancer. I am excessively Caucasian. Second, research. My own writing has dragons as a part of the setting. The main character will encounter them in all their life stages, and there just isn't anything comparable in today's world. And while magic exists in the world, I would like to have some natural explanations. How would a dragon grow and change? How does an animal the size of a T-Rex interact with the world? What other creatures would need to exist to keep it fed? How fast might it grow? All the nitty-gritty details authors have to know even if the reader never sees it. With that said, let's talk about the book. Have you ever read a scientific paper? If you have, you know they aren't exactly casual afternoon read. They are dense, micro-focused, and are packed with $20 words that, if they aren't Latin, they might as well be.
The Indominus Rex makes us relevant again.
The Indominus Rex.
We needed something scary and easy to pronounce. You should hear a 4-year-old try to say Archaeornithomimus.
We should hear you try to say it.
The main issue is that it is near-peer writing. It's a PhD in paleontology, writing about the growth of the dominant theropod of Western North America during the late Cretaceous, to share their findings with other PhDs in paleontology focused on the dominant theropod of Western North America during the late Cretaceous and related fields. When something significant is discovered, these discoveries are filtered through journalists who may or may not have a science background, parsed and parceled down into 2-minute segments to be wedged between weather and sports, for a layman audience that, let's be honest, probably learned everything they know about dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. So information tends to get lost in translation. Science writing for a general audience needs to bring it down a notch. Even those of us who love dinosaurs rarely have the bandwidth for a 1,000-page dissertation on how the bones of T-Rex's skull change as they grow. This book nails the sweet spot. It's full of information, simplified without being watered down, and sprinkled with human interest stories about some of the eccentric characters in the field. Seriously, some of these guys are quirky enough to step right out of fantasy. I love it. Baron, and I'm probably going to mess this name up, I'm very sorry. Baron Franz Nasipa von Velasco Celavaz puts Indiana Jones to shame. Between espionage missions against the Ottoman Empire, he taught paleontology as a full professor, learned multiple languages, discovered the island effect in European dinosaurs, and traveled the world with, in the nomenclature of pre-World War I, his male secretary. Too bad it ended tragedy. I won't spoil the ending of that story. You definitely need to read about him yourself. But back to the dinosaurs. There's something about dinosaurs. Partly it is that some of them were just so big. The largest creatures ever to walk the earth. But their story begins not unlike our own, living in the shadow of bigger, stronger creatures. In their case, it was their own crocodilioid cousins. The late Cretaceous tends to get all the glory with being home of the tyrant king. But here, all dinosaurs were peasants. Small, fast creatures that it existed on lizards and small mammals, while running from some amazingly large land-living crocodiles. These dinosaur ancestors were simple, exhibiting a basic body plan, three-toed hands and feet, quadrupeds with legs under the body. They existed this way for millions of years, until the big continents began to drift. Of course, this is geologic time, so the world is ripping itself apart at approximately the rate of fingernail growth. So really fast. Here is where we see the rise of the first true dinosaurs. From here, the book takes us on a tour of the different ages by way of the fossils. From Darwin's prediction of feathered dinosaurs, through the bone wars, and into the modern methods of studying bones, including CAT scans and 3D modeling. Once upon a time, the only way to study a fossil was to cut them open, which actually happened with the first T-Rex skull ever found. I can hear the paleo nerds cringing now. These days, fossils can be scanned into computers, examined closely, and using the bone scars where muscles and tendons attached, and living animals as analog, they can build a computer model and put it through its paces. But first you have to find the fossils. Fossilization isn't easy or common. For every fossil we find, there are hundreds of thousands of animals that died without leaving a trace. It's entirely possible that entire species have lived and died and we will never know about them simply because they did not live in a place or time conducive to creating fossils. And once a fossil is found, it has to be transported to a museum, cleaned, and studied. Of course, we have to be honest. Not all fossils are created equal. Unique, large, and complete fossils are going to get more attention. There's one story in here about a new dinosaur that was identified from a fossil that had been in museum storage for decades because it came out of a large dig containing assumably exclusively coelophysis fossils. It was similar enough that at a glance to be taken as just one more in the pile and tucked away without further thought. And even once it is clean, it has to be identified. Bones, and by extension fossils, are slow to change as species diverge. Lion and tiger skulls are very similar, and even if the differences are there, it usually takes an expert to identify them. This is to say nothing of creatures we have never seen in the flesh. So even if a paleontologist thinks they have a new species, it will take months to catalog and compare it to the other known species, and hope someone else doesn't beat you to the punch. But with all that science comes peer review. When you're talking fossils, it may take years or even decades for your discoveries to be confirmed. I was a child when the asteroid theory was first proposed in the early 80s. They were still debating it by the time I graduated high school. While it's mostly settled, new questions still crop up now and then, including whether or not the dinosaurs were already in decline. More recently, it has been feathers. Did dinosaurs have feathers? Yes, absolutely. Did all dinosaurs have feathers? That's a little more complex. As of the publishing of this book, no fossils of large dinosaurs with feathers have been found. It is unlikely, though not impossible, that the big dinosaurs, even those at the end of the Cretaceous, had complex flight feathers. T-Rex had no need to fly, after all. They could have had display feathers, like a peacock's tail. They could have had a fluffy coat of down to keep them warm. They could have had pen or proto-feathers. They could have had feathers the same way a whale has hair, briefly and only as babies. Or any combination of these. Unless the right fossil comes to light, we will probably never know. The most recent controversy, and one not covered in this book, probably due to how little was known and confirmed at the time of writing and publishing, is the discovery of soft tissues in fossils. That is, needless to say, extremely rare and happens only under very specific circumstances. There's a lot of unknowns on that one, so tap the card for more information from someone more qualified. I'm going to put this on my top shelf. It's informative, engaging, and accessible. Everything you want in a science book for a lay audience. If you like dinosaurs and are looking to learn more, I highly recommend it. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's mileage will vary, so feel free to leave your thoughts.